Alright guys, we're going to attempt to show you how I skin out the feet on the fox. Always hanging upside down first. I start at the pad, right at the back of the pad, and I make a slice all the way up to the elbow. Now, fox skin is very thin. It's like a rabbit, so poking holes and ripping are pretty much a common occurrence if you're not really careful and don't take your time. The whole thing is about taking your time. Now the knife I use is just an old butcher's knife, but it is very pointy, and I use the point almost the whole time that I'm working on these feet, because it's not a cutting motion, it's more of a scratching motion when you get down to the bones of the feet. Once you loosen up the fur around the leg there, then you can pretty much get your thumbs in there and pull it apart. The less cuts you make, the less of a chance that you're going to have of making a hole. Now, it's not the end of the world if you make a hole in the leg. You probably won't even be able to see it when it's all said and done. So, you know, the key to doing feet is having the time and the patience, and just take your time. And that's what it's really all about, just taking your time. It's not that difficult. Now, when you go on the front feet, the front legs of any canines, just like a dog, they do have a dew claw, and that's what you see me snip off there. It's about 1.5 inches to 2 inches above the very end of the leg. So if you hit a hard spot when you're skinning down to that you just take them little snips and snip that right off, because it's there's really no bone to it. You just snip it off and you're good to go. Once you get a little bit of the skin loosened up from around the leg, you just use your thumbs and you make a gap. Then you use these. I find that these work the best for breaking that bone. And then you get yourself a handle. So now when you get to this part, you'll see a white membrane. You could put a little bit of pressure there to expose the membrane and just start scratching along the bone, not the fur. And you can pull a little bit and get away with it. If you pull too much, it's going to rip, and then you know you pulled too much. It's really, you do it by feel. So you just look for that white membrane that develops when you put pressure on the bare leg there, and just start working your way down little by little. And then when you come to the underside of the foot, there's the dew claw getting snipped off right there. And now you have to loosen the pad from the leg itself. You got to get your knife inside there, make a couple little cuts, and separate the pad from the back of underside of the toes. And then just keep scratching along, keeping pressure on as you go, and it'll just start to peel off like a glove, just like you're skinning the fox itself. Same thing with the feet. The only thing is you just have to take your time and use a very sharp, very pointy knife. I mean, that works for me the best. And you just, as you can see, I'm just starting to scratch the bones right where the white membrane meets the bone. And it'll just start to come loose little by little. So it takes about 5 or 10 minutes for each foot. So, you know, that's a little bit long, but it definitely gets, if you're going to tan your hides, then it definitely makes them look 100% better when they got the feet attached. Also, the fur buyer I deal with, he pays me more because I have the feet attached, because he can do stuff more. He can make all kinds of things. People like to see the legs. They don't like to see a pelt cut off right at the butt. So the key, like I said before, is just taking your time, making your scratches, and pretty soon that fur will reverse itself, and then it'll be easy. You just got to get your thumb in there a little bit, expose it, make a couple of little tiny cuts on either side of the pad there. That's what I'm doing here. I kind of use the leg as a pressure. I put pressure on the leg with the back of my hand. I mean, it actually looks more difficult than it is, but you just have to keep looking for that white membrane, and that will separate for you really nicely. Now once you get the pad freed up and start working your way down, you're going to start going down each toe, and they're all going to be individual. So you have to go all the way down to the last knuckle, which holds the toenail in place. So once you get to that part, which you'll see we'll be coming up to right here in a minute, it's going to expose the last knuckle. And that's when you get, I use snips. I guess you could use heavy scissors. I'm cutting the last bit of the pad right there. And that's probably going to be it for this foot as far as all you're going to get. You know, the next move you make is going to be cutting it free. So the snips come in handy. You just snip it right off, right at the knuckle. And that's going to be it for this foot right here. You just unravel it from all your twisting and turning. You turn it inside out. Some guys put borax and stuff like that, and there's your finished product right there. Comes out perfect. Now we're going to do the other leg, which is the leg that had the trap on it. So that's going to be a little bit different because it had a trap on it. There's a lot of stress involved, and blood vessels are broken, but no bones will be broke. But there might be a tiny cut or two in there that you have to not worry about. You just have to be careful not to pull on it. That's the only thing. If you pull on it, it's just like paper. It's paper thin. So if you pull on a piece of paper when it already has a tear in it, you know what's going to happen. So right up to the elbow, you just peel the fur back. You make a couple little cuts where you can expose that white membrane that separates it. And then you get your thumbs in there. You let your thumbs do the work. You don't have to be real rough with it. It will come right off. When you get the feel for it, it's going to be a lot easier than, you know, than what it looks. But you get your thumb in there. You get out the big snips. You cut the bone so you got yourself a handle to pull on when you're skinning down the foot. You have to have something to pull on. Sometimes it's a little slippery. You can grab a rag and use it to hold something like that. But as you can see, it's just a little bit different from the foot that wasn't in a trap. It's got a little bit more blood on it. Some of the things are broken, but you don't have, some of the ligaments might be broke maybe, or maybe not. It depends on what size trap you use and how deep he was caught and all that. But the key is not to pull on it too hard. You just have to, I don't like to say cut, because you're not cutting. You're actually just scratching away the membrane. And with a little bit of pressure, it's going to come free. That's the best way I can describe it. But you really have to do it and not be afraid to do it. So, but if you want to get your pelts, you know, looking as best as they can get, if you know, in today's prices, sometimes it doesn't pay to sell them. It just pays to spend a couple extra dollars, and then you got yourself a nice pelt forever. Or you can sell it to the trade market, who people actually make stuff out of these. And they always want the feed on if that's the case. It always commands a little bit more money when you go the extra mile because you're putting more time in, you know. It doesn't make a difference to the tanner if the feed on or not. They take care of it when they get it at the tannery. What has to be split the pads or anything like that. But as long as you get all the bones and muscles out of there, that's the big thing. You can see this foot is a little bit damaged because it had the trap on it, but you just have to work around that. It's pretty much a show and tell from now on. I'm just showing you what the foot looks like after it's been in a trap for a few hours. Nothing is broken. It's just that you can see I poked a little hole right through the pad there. That's how fragile that is in that area, but it's really not going to make any difference at all if there's a little tiny hole. But that knife that I use is so pointy that you have to be a little bit careful. But you can see I'm using the bone as the leg, as the pressure point, and almost like I'm writing with that knife. And it really is just a scratching motion. I mean, there's a couple ways to do feet. This is the way I do it. I'm no expert, but it works for me. And I've never had any complaints, and I always get the whole foot back when it comes back from the tannery. But you can see that there's really not that much damage done from that trap. You know, all the propaganda that's out there about traps breaking legs and it's all a bunch of crap. But that's it. You got to get your fingers in there. You get your little pointy knife in there, and you start making little tiny cuts, taking your time, and it'll all come free a little as you go. So I'm just going to let you watch because I explained most of what goes on, almost all of what goes on. And you can see you have a harder problem just getting a grip on that pad so you can cut it free a little bit. Sometimes you need better fingers than I have, but my hands don't work that good in the cold. So I'm just scratching the pad away from the underside of the bone and just lifting as I go. I have a little bit of pressure on there. You can see just before it tears. That's when you want to stop pulling and doing more cutting with the knife, scratching with the knife, I should say, and freeing it up just little by little. And pretty soon, sometimes you get lucky and the whole thing will reverse itself like a glove and come right off. But sometimes with the leg that's caught in a trap, there's a little more work involved, a couple more minutes. And there you can see how it slips out of my hands. That's why I suggest using a rag. But you need that, remember to, when you cut that leg, you got to leave enough on there for you to grab a hold of and use as a pressure point when you put pressure on it like that. Another thing is, it feels like you're not making no progress, but you really are. You know, it's just, you just have to take your time. You can see where the white's exposed when I peel the fur back there a little bit. And then everything just starts exposing itself as you go. Just little tiny motions, little scratches right across those toes. I'm just separating the toes now so I can get my snips in there. And we're right at the last knuckle right there. As soon as that pad turns itself over, you're at the last knuckle. And now it's just a matter of getting the snips out and just separating the whole thing. And that's pretty much it, fellas. If you want pelts with the feet attached, that's how you do it. That's one way to do it. That's how I do it. I'm not an expert, but it works for me. Anyways, I hope this helped you guys out that want to keep them feet on them fox and coyotes. Thanks for watching.